Hi, my name is Kimberly LaPagna, and I'm the mother of a child who died from heroin. And I have something that I would like to share with you to give you a better perspective on what it's like to live with the aftermath of what heroin can do, not only to yourself, but to the families that you leave behind. So here it goes. I had never really put thought into why my son would want to do drugs, because I think I already know the answer. Scott was born loved. He had a family who adored him. He was always smiling and laughing. I gave him birthday parties. He had lots of friends. He played t-ball and then went on to play football and was in chess club. As a little boy, he loved Pokemon cards and Power Rangers. He was super smart, funny, and cute. Scott knew right from wrong. We discussed the dangers of drugs and alcohol abuse. It wasn't like he didn't know. I wonder, was it the fact that I was working 2 jobs to take care of him and his sisters as a single mom? Was it the fact that his dad was barely in his life and mostly not at all? Was it the battle with his weight, his injury during football where he ruptured 2 discs in his back at the age of 14? His family history of his paternal grandfather being an addict, or was it the people he chose to call his friends? Someone once said to me, it was the making of a perfect storm, a combination of everything. There was a lot of pain and loss in my son's life that he tried to hide from the outside world, and of course, himself. He didn't want to feel the pain of losing his dad, his self-esteem issues of being overweight, and the physical pain of being injured, or the deaths of his grandma and great-grandma, both who he was very close to. So he got high. Alcohol, weed, cocaine, pills, and when the high wasn't high enough, heroin. I had no idea Scott was doing heroin. When it came to drugs, my son was a really good liar. He lived with me. I would have known, right? Wrong. Scott didn't inject heroin, he snorted it. I don't know if he thought to himself, doing it this way is safer than putting a needle in his arm. Turns out it's not. I myself, as a mom, as his mom, thought he would one day grow out of the experimenting with drugs and alcohol stage. I was fooling myself. As a parent, we never want to see or believe bad things about our kids. Scott changed. His nasty attitude, the disrespectfulness, and the way he just didn't seem to care about hurting anybody's feelings. I always thought he was tired or stressed out or upset over something. I guess I was naive in a lot of ways. I just didn't know the signs. And I always thought of myself as being educated and pretty street smart. The night before my son died, he was home all day. He went out briefly in the late afternoon with some of his so-called friends. After he came back, he was in for the night. He texted me while I was out shopping to bring him home some Taco Bell. We spent that night hanging out, talking, laughing, him showing me silly video clips from his new iPhone that he had just received 2 days earlier after his other was stolen by a group of people who jumped him, beat him, and robbed him the week before. We were talking about his plan for his birthday and what he was going to do and what he wanted for a gift, a PlayStation 3. We sat on our deck until about 2 a.m. I kissed him goodnight and told him I loved him as I always did. He said, "I love you too, Mima." He always called me Mima. I went into my room, closed the door, and went to sleep. Scott went to his bedroom. That was the last time I would ever hear him call me Mima. The next morning, I had an appointment, and Scott was supposed to watch his 2-year-old little sister while I was gone. I called his name to wake him up, and there was nothing. I went to his room, where I found my only son, my baby boy. All I could do was fall on my knees and scream. I touched him. He was cold and blue. And if any of you think that dying is like what you see on TV, neat and clean, you're sadly mistaken. It is ugly and horrific. I died that day. I suffer every day with flashbacks of seeing my son dead in his bed. Those visions and nightmares do not go away. There are no words for what it is like to lose part of you. He was part of me. He was my son, my heart, and my life. Burying your children is not supposed to happen. We are supposed to grow old, our children grow up, give us grandchildren, and all of those fun things. I believe that Scotty just thought he was partying with his friends the first time he ever touched a drug or alcohol. Do I think he ever would have imagined that his mom, sisters, stepdad, and stepbrothers would have to live their lives without him? Never. He thought he was just having a good time, hanging out with his boys. It was a very selfish thing to think the only person you are hurting is yourself.
Sorry. We can stop for a sec if you want.
No, it's okay. My daughters live without their brother. My daughter will be going to prom, and there will be no pictures of her in her dress beside her big brother. My 4-year-old will never remember her brother, only through pictures and what we tell her about him. I live without my son. The pain that my family and I suffer can never be described. My son Scott died from an accidental overdose of heroin tainted with fentanyl 2 days before his 22nd birthday. Fentanyl is a drug 100 times more powerful than morphine, and he had no idea the heroin he got was mixed with that garbage. But that is what the dealers are putting in it now. Heroin itself is deadly. Now with an additive of fentanyl, you are almost guaranteed a trip to the morgue. I remember driving behind the hearse going to the cemetery for my son's burial. I kept thinking to myself, this isn't real. This is just a bad dream. It isn't a bad dream for me and my family. It's a nightmare that we live with every day and will never wake up from. Instead of planning a birthday party, making a cake, and buying a PlayStation 3, I was planning a funeral, picking clothes out to bury him in, and buying a casket. The so-called friends my son hung out with earlier that day never came to his funeral, never offered their condolences to his family. They are nowhere to be found. Funny how they can be your boys 1 minute, and then poof, you don't mean squat to them when you're gone. You were just somebody to get high with. Those were not my son's real friends. So many people said that all the people they knew, sorry, I had to do that one over. So many people said that of all the people that they knew, they never thought in a million years this would ever happen to Scotty. I'm sure Scott never thought it would happen to him, but it did. He was a young man who loved his family, his friends, and had a wild but loving zest for life. The kind of kid who, if he had $1, he'd give it to you. One of the quotes he had on his Facebook page was, "I don't know where I'm going with my life, but I do know that I will rise above." He loved music, listening to it, and making it. A larger-than-life character that when he walked into a room, you knew he was there, loud and boisterous. A wise guy and a smart mouth, but always loving and gentle. So next time, when you're hanging out with your friends and you're going to a party, or any situation where you might be encouraged to drink or get high, think of my son. Think of your mom, dad, brothers, and sisters. You are not immune and you are not invincible. Heroin will take your life. You will be guaranteed a life of addiction, pain, and tragedy. and the always looming possibility of death. Think of what you will leave behind for your family, your mom, your dad, siblings, and friends. What you will leave behind is nothing but immense pain, heartbreak, and last but not least, only memories of you. Your choices, no matter what you may think at the time, do and will affect the people around you. My son will never have the chance to make things right. He will never have the opportunity to go to college, see his sisters go to prom, graduate high school, get married, or to become an uncle. The choice Scott made cost him his life and profoundly affected ours. As I said, my son was my heart and my life. My son was lost, wandering through life trying to find where he fit in. Drugs and the company it keeps offers a false sense of welcoming. Scotty was a larger-than-life personality that lit up every room that he walked in. He loved and adored his little sisters and stepbrothers and took his role as a big brother very seriously. My son never knew how many lives he has touched and how many people truly love and miss him. He left a piece of himself with each of us. He would give the best bear hugs, the ones where you couldn't breathe, but you didn't want him to let go. There's not a day that goes by that my heart and thoughts don't turn to him, be it good or bad. I try more for good. I miss my baby. I think to myself, my son died once, and I die over and over every morning when I open my eyes, and he's no longer here. I'm still gathering strength and will continue to do so. The way that I keep strong is by talking to people, young, old, anyone who I can help to choose a better path than the one that will lead to an early grave. If by sharing my story, my son's story, can help just one person with this disease, then my son's death and my suffering will not be in vain. Thank you for listening.